My name is Vada, and at 32 years old, I finally understand what it means to be invisible in your own family. Growing up, my younger sister Natalie was always the golden child, the one whose achievements papered our refrigerator, while mine gathered dust in drawers. I spent decades trying to prove my worth, only to have my dreams dismissed as unrealistic fantasies. But last month, everything changed. The same family who never believed in me now can't stop calling. If you've ever been underestimated, stick around. Before I dive in, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of underdog champions. I grew up in a picturesque colonial house in suburban Boston, with the kind of family that looked perfect on holiday cards. My father, William, taught economics at a prestigious university, while my mother, Catherine, conducted groundbreaking research in biochemistry. Academic excellence wasn't just encouraged in our household, it was the baseline expectation, the air we breathed. Our family of five had a clear hierarchy that became more pronounced with each passing year. My older brother James, 3 years my senior, was the responsible firstborn, who followed in our father's footsteps studying business and economics. I occupied the chronically overlooked middle position. And then there was Natalie, my younger sister by 3 years, the undisputed star of our family constellation. The signs of Natalie's academic brilliance appeared early. She was reading chapter books by age 4, completed 5th-grade math when she was in 2nd grade, and skipped 4th grade entirely because standardized tests showed she was operating years above her age level. While other parents displayed crayon drawings on their refrigerators, ours showcased Natalie's perfect spelling tests and math competition certificates. It wasn't that I wasn't smart. I consistently earned B's and occasional A's, participated in debate club, and wrote for the school newspaper. But my strengths lay in areas my parents considered secondary: creativity, intuition, an ability to connect with people, and thinking outside established systems. In our household, these qualities were treated as pleasant but ultimately frivolous traits compared to Natalie's analytical mind. Vada has such an active imagination, my mother would say when relatives visited her tone, making it clear this wasn't necessarily a compliment. Meanwhile, Natalie would be introduced with, "Natalie just won the regional science fair with her project on cellular regeneration." Our family traditions unconsciously reinforced this hierarchy. When Natalie aced her SATs, we had a special dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. When she won the state science competition, my parents took a rare weekend off work to drive her to the awards ceremony. When I was selected as editor of the school literary magazine, my accomplishment received a quick, "That's nice," over breakfast before conversation returned to Natalie's college applications. I still remember my sophomore year of high school when my mixed media artwork was selected for a statewide exhibition. Only 20 students across Massachusetts received this honor, and I was ecstatic when my art teacher called with the news. I rushed home bursting to share my accomplishment with my family. "That's wonderful, honey," my mother said distractedly, barely looking up from the journal article she was reviewing. "Can you set the table? Natalie will be home any minute from her science competition." As it turned out, Natalie had placed second in the regional science fair that day. When she arrived home, my parents erupted in celebration, my father popping open a bottle of sparkling cider he kept for special occasions. Throughout dinner, they discussed every detail of her project on bacterial resistance, made plans to frame her certificate, and called both sets of grandparents to share the news. No one mentioned my art award. No one asked to see my selected piece. By dessert, I found myself smiling and congratulating Natalie along with everyone else, my own accomplishment forgotten. Later that night, I cried silently in my bedroom, torn between genuine pride in my sister's success and a hollow ache in my chest that felt like disappearing. This wasn't Natalie's fault. My sister was kind, hardworking, and often seemed uncomfortable with the spotlight our parents constantly directed her way. We shared whispered conversations late at night about the pressure she felt to maintain her perfect record. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with what seemed like envy when I'd return from afternoon walks with friends or impromptu trips to museums, my schedule free from the rigorous academic regimen that structured her days. "You're so lucky," she told me once when she was cramming for finals while I sketched ideas for a school mural project. "You get to do what you enjoy." I didn't know how to explain that this freedom came at a cost. The absence of parental attention, the implicit understanding that my pursuits weren't worthy of the family's limited time and resources. How could I resent her when she was trapped in her own way by our parents' expectations? As we moved through high school, the pattern became more entrenched. Natalie collected perfect grades, prestigious awards, and eventually early acceptance letters from Ivy League universities. I collected art show participations, editorial positions on school publications, and a growing certainty that my path would need to diverge from the one my parents had mapped out. One evening during my senior year, I attempted to discuss my college plans with my parents. I'd been researching programs that combined business and creative arts, excited about possibilities that seemed to merge my different strengths. "I'm thinking about State University's entrepreneurship program," I said during dinner. "They have amazing internship connections with creative industries, and their business incubator has launched some really innovative companies." My father frowned, setting down his fork. "State. With your grades, you could at least get into a second-tier private college. Nothing prestigious like Natalie's options, of course, but something with a better reputation than State. But State's program is actually ranked in the top 15 nationwide for what I want to study." I countered, the research fresh in my mind. My mother patted my hand in a way that made me feel like a child. "Darling, we just want what's best for you. Creative industries are so volatile. Why not consider something more stable?" The conversation shifted, as it always did, to Natalie's college visits and the merit scholarships she'd been offered. I pushed my food around my plate, the familiar knot tightening in my stomach. My parents couldn't see that their protection was actually limitation, their concern masking a fundamental lack of faith in my judgment and abilities. Despite the invisible weight on my shoulders, I loved my family. I admired my father's analytical mind, my mother's dedication to her research, James's steady reliability, and Natalie's genuine brilliance. But that love existed alongside a growing determination to find my own definition of success, even if it never appeared on my family's measuring stick. As high school drew to a close, the contrast between Natalie's path and mine became stark. She would follow the well-worn track to academic prestige, while I was stepping into uncertainty, guided only by an inner compass my family couldn't read. What I didn't realize then was that this divergence would eventually crack open our family's carefully constructed hierarchy, forcing us all to reconsider the values that had shaped our relationships for decades. The acceptance letters arrived within days of each other. Natalie's thick envelope from Princeton with a full academic scholarship, and my equally thick packet from State University with their Emerging Entrepreneurs Program materials. The reactions in our household couldn't have been more different. "Princeton," my mother exclaimed, actual tears forming in her eyes as Natalie opened her letter at the kitchen table. My father immediately called his brother, then his colleagues. By evening, a bottle of real champagne had been opened, grandparents had been informed, and social media announcements had been crafted and posted. 2 days later, when my State University package arrived, I opened it alone in my bedroom. The colorful brochures showcasing innovation labs, startup competitions, and alumni success stories made my heart race with possibilities. When I brought the news downstairs, my parents offered tight smiles. "That's nice, honey," my mother said. "They have a decent business program. Not Princeton, of course, but solid." "We'll need to discuss the financial aspects," my father added immediately. "Your brother and sister both earned substantial scholarships. We've budgeted accordingly." The subtext was clear. Natalie's education was an investment. Mine was an expense. While they would cover her full room and board plus extras, I would receive partial tuition assistance and need to work for the rest. The justification was always presented as practical financial planning, but the message beneath was unmistakable. They simply valued her potential more than mine. That fall, we diverged even further. Natalie moved into her Princeton dorm with new bedding, a laptop, and a monthly allowance that exceeded what I made waiting tables on weekends. I moved into State with secondhand furniture, my high school laptop, and a work-study position in the admissions office. During our weekly family calls, my parents would spend 30 minutes discussing Natalie's courses, professors, and campus activities before turning to me with a perfunctory, "And how are your classes, Vada?" While Natalie thrived in Princeton's structured academic environment, I discovered an unexpected freedom in being untethered from family expectations. For perhaps the first time, I could pursue my interests without constant comparison. I joined the Entrepreneurship Club, took courses in digital marketing and creative business models, and started developing ideas that merged technology with artistic expression. Holiday gatherings, however, became subtle battlegrounds. Thanksgiving of my sophomore year remains particularly vivid in my memory. Seated around our dining room table with its perfectly polished silver and grandmother's china, the conversation centered on Natalie's research assistantship with a Nobel-nominated professor. The professor says she has the most organized mind he's encountered in an undergraduate. My father reported, proudly helping himself to more stuffing. He's already talking about co-authoring a paper with her. That's wonderful, my mother beamed. Your father and I were discussing it, and we thought we might surprise you with a new laptop for Christmas, Natalie. That old one must be struggling with all the statistical analysis you're doing. I picked at my food, thinking about my own laptop that frequently froze when running the design programs I needed for my courses. I'd been saving tips for months toward a replacement. So, Veda, my aunt finally asked, perhaps noticing my silence, what are you up to at school? Momentarily buoyed by the interest, I shared my excitement about a business concept I was developing for a platform that would connect artists with commercial opportunities using algorithm-driven matching and portfolio analytics. I'm working with 2 computer science students to develop a prototype. I explained, genuine enthusiasm in my voice. We're planning to enter the spring business competition. The winners get seed funding and mentorship. An awkward silence followed before my father cleared his throat. Sounds creative, though I wonder about the market viability. Artists aren't exactly known for having disposable income for subscription services. Actually, that's a common misconception, I countered, having researched this extensively. The creative economy is valued at over $2 trillion globally, but the infrastructures connecting talent with opportunities are incredibly inefficient. Our platform would— Natalie, my mother interrupted, tell everyone about that fascinating lecture series you mentioned last week. And just like that, my business idea was dismissed as another one of Veda's impractical creative ventures. The conversation swung back to Natalie, leaving me with half-spoken thoughts and the familiar taste of invisibility. It was during this difficult period that I met Professor Diana Martin, who would become a pivotal figure in my life. A former marketing executive who had built and sold 2 successful companies before moving to academia, Professor Martin taught my advanced entrepreneurship seminar. Unlike my family, she saw potential in my hybrid approach to business and creativity. You're thinking at the intersection of typically siloed industries, she told me after reviewing my business proposal. That's exactly where innovation happens. The people who can bridge those gaps are rare and valuable. Her validation was like water after years of drought. Under her mentorship, I refined my business concept, conducted market research, and built financial projections that withstood rigorous scrutiny. Professor Martin didn't just teach business principles. She helped me recognize my different perspective as an asset, rather than a liability. Meanwhile, Natalie continued her perfect trajectory, graduating with highest honors, receiving immediate acceptance to Princeton's doctoral program, and collecting prestigious internships during summer breaks. Each family gathering brought new announcements of her achievements, with my parents radiating pride that seemed to physically warm the room. My path remained thornier. I juggled multiple part-time jobs with full-time studies. I pitched my business concepts to skeptical classmates and professors. I worked through iterations of failure that taught painful but necessary lessons. And slowly, I built confidence in my vision that existed independent of my family's approval. During senior year, when Natalie secured a research grant that made local news, my parents called extended family members to share the article. When I was selected as one of 10 students nationwide to attend an exclusive innovation workshop in San Francisco, I mentioned it during a family call, only to have the topic quickly shift back to Natalie's grant project. The pattern was so established that it had become almost predictable. Yet something was shifting within me. The hurt remained, but alongside it grew a fierce determination. My family might never see my potential, but that wouldn't stop me from realizing it. Their underestimation was becoming not just a wound, but a driving force propelling me forward with something to prove, not just to them, but to myself. As graduation approached, Natalie prepared to begin her fully funded doctoral program, while I faced the uncertain terrain of entrepreneurship during an economic downturn. The contrast between our paths had never been starker, but for the first time, I felt a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, following a path that was authentically mine, regardless of whether my family could recognize its value. The economic recession hit full force the year I graduated, turning an already challenging job market into a battlefield of desperate graduates competing for dwindling opportunities. With my business idea still in development stage and savings rapidly depleting, I reluctantly accepted a position at Lawrence Marketing Group, a traditional firm with rigid hierarchies and outdated approaches to digital media. My tiny studio apartment in a less desirable neighborhood was a far cry from Natalie's graduate housing stipend or James's sleek downtown condo purchased with help from our parents. The corporate job demanded 60-hour weeks of PowerPoint adjustments and client meeting notes, while offering little room for the innovative thinking that energized me. It's a stepping stone, I told myself each morning as I donned the bland business casual attire the firm expected. Just temporary. Nights and weekends became my real work time. After mind-numbing days creating traditional marketing materials for insurance companies and retail chains, I would return home, change into comfortable clothes, and immerse myself in building my business concept. My dining table disappeared beneath market research printouts, competitor analyses, and wireframe sketches for the platform interface. The contrast between my daytime and evening work highlighted exactly what was missing from traditional business approaches to creative industries. Artists, designers, musicians, and writers were treated as interchangeable commodities by agencies who didn't understand their unique talents. Meanwhile, creative professionals struggled to find opportunities that matched their specific skills and interests. The disconnect was costing both sides time, money, and satisfaction. My platform, which I named Artisan, would use sophisticated matching algorithms to connect creative professionals with exactly the right opportunities, while giving businesses access to perfectly suited talent. The technology would learn from successful matches, continuously improving its recommendations, and building portfolios that showcased each artist's unique strengths. While Natalie received regular care packages from our parents and assistance with her graduate apartment's security deposit, I juggled rent increases and student loan payments alone. The disparity became painfully apparent during a family dinner 6 months after graduation. "We've decided to help Natalie with her rent during the doctoral program," my father announced as we ate dessert. "The stipend is generous, but housing near campus is ridiculously expensive. It's an investment in her future." I pushed my cake around the plate, calculating the overtime hours I'd worked that month to cover an unexpected car repair. No one had offered to help with my security deposit or even asked if I was managing financially. The assumption remained that Natalie's future warranted investment, while mine was a personal choice I should handle alone. "What about you, Vada?" James asked, perhaps noticing my silence. "How's the marketing job going?" "It pays the bills," I answered honestly. "But I'm making real progress on Artisan in my free time. I've built wireframes for the entire user experience and connected with some developers who might—" "Oh, you're still doing that startup thing," my mother interrupted, surprise evident in her tone. "I thought that was a college project." "It's an actual business I'm building," I said, trying to keep frustration from my voice. "I've conducted market validation with over 100 potential users, and the feedback has been extremely positive." My father sipped his coffee with a skeptical expression. "Startups are incredibly risky, especially in this economy. 90% fail within the first year. Your corporate position offers stability benefits, a clear advancement path." "A path I'm not interested in." I interjected unusual assertiveness in my voice. "The corporate work isn't fulfilling." "Fulfillment doesn't pay rent," he countered dismissively. "Actually, successful businesses do," I replied, then immediately regretted the sharpness in my tone when uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My boyfriend Tyler, who had joined us for dinner, squeezed my hand under the table in silent support. We had met at a local entrepreneurs meetup where he was developing an app for independent musicians. Tyler believed wholeheartedly in my vision for Artisan and regularly pushed me to think bigger, take risks, and believe in my abilities. While his support meant everything to me, he struggled to understand the complex dynamics of my family. "I don't get why you don't just tell them how you feel," he said later that night as we walked to the subway. "Your business idea is solid. The market research backs it up. Why do you let them dismiss you like that?" I couldn't explain the decades of emotional patterns, the subtle ways my family had communicated that Natalie's path was valuable while mine was questionable. Tyler had grown up with parents who celebrated his every interest, who treated his entrepreneurial dreams as worthy of support rather than skepticism. The contrast between our families became another quiet pain I carried. After 18 months of working days at Lawrence Marketing and nights on Artisan Y, finally accumulated enough savings to launch a beta version of the platform. Working with a small development team I'd met through entrepreneurship events, we built a simplified version that demonstrated the core functionality. The launch party, held in a friend's art gallery space, attracted local creative professionals and small business owners curious about this new approach. For 2 months, the platform showed promise. Users signed up, matches were made, and positive testimonials accumulated. I began to see a path toward leaving my corporate job and focusing on Artisan full-time. And then everything collapsed. A major competitor with significantly more funding launched an almost identical platform, complete with features we had planned for future iterations. Simultaneously, our lead developer accepted a position at a tech giant, leaving us without the technical expertise to evolve quickly. User growth plateaued, then declined. The financial projections I'd carefully constructed became meaningless as reality diverged sharply from our targets. By month 3, I had to make the painful decision to shut down operations. My savings were depleted, the remaining team members had found other opportunities, and the competitive landscape had transformed overnight. The failure hit me with physical force. I'd invested not just money, but identity in Artisan, seeing it as my chance to prove my vision had value. Now I faced returning to full-time corporate work with nothing to show for my nights and weekends of labor except an empty bank account and a dormant website. When my family learned of Artisan's failure, their responses followed predictable patterns. "We were concerned this might happen," my mother said during our weekly call, her voice carrying the distinctive tone of concern, masking satisfaction at being proven right. "The business world is so competitive, especially for someone without specialized business education." "You know," my father added, "there's no shame in focusing on building a solid career at Lawrence. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. Natalie's research is flourishing precisely because she's following a structured path in a field with clear metrics for success." Even as I responded with non-committal phrases, something inside me cracked. The implied message, that my sister's conventional academic path was inherently more valuable than my entrepreneurial aspirations, reinforced a comparison that had shaped my entire life. In that moment, I hit emotional rock bottom, questioning not just my business acumen, but my fundamental worth and abilities. For weeks afterward, I moved through life mechanically. I arrived at Lawrence precisely at 8, completed assigned tasks with minimal engagement, and returned home to stare at walls that had once been covered with Artisan materials, but now stood blank, mirroring the emptiness I felt. Tyler tried to pull me out of the darkness, reminding me of the positive user feedback we'd received and the valuable lessons learned. But beneath my startup's failure lay the deeper wound of family dynamics that had taught me to doubt myself at a fundamental level. How could I build something meaningful when the people who had known me longest believed I was pursuing the wrong path? It was Professor Diana who finally broke through the fog. Having stayed in touch after graduation, she invited me to coffee when she learned about Artisan's closure. "Every successful entrepreneur has failure stories," she said as we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe near campus. "The difference is what they do with those failures." "My family thinks it proves I should stick with corporate life," I admitted, voicing the thought that had been circling painfully in my mind. Diana studied me for a long moment. "Veda, may I speak frankly? Your business didn't fail because your concept was flawed. It failed because you were undercapitalized and outmaneuvered by competitors with deeper resources. That's a circumstantial failure, not a conceptual one. She pulled out a notebook and began sketching rapidly. What if you approached the problem from a different angle instead of competing directly with established platforms? What if you identified an underserved niche within the creative economy? Where are the gaps that larger players are overlooking? For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of energy. By the time we finished our coffee, I had filled several pages with notes and new approaches to the market problem I'd identified. The failure still stung, but it was becoming informative rather than definitive. As I walked back to my apartment that evening, I realized that while my family's lack of faith had wounded me deeply, their opinion wasn't the arbiter of my potential. Professor Diana saw value in my thinking precisely because it diverged from conventional paths. Perhaps the very qualities my family had dismissed, my ability to connect disparate ideas, to envision systems differently, to bridge creativity and commerce, were actually my greatest strengths. That night, I began rebuilding, not just my business concept, but my relationship with my own abilities. The path forward wouldn't be easy, especially without the family support that had smoothed Natalie's journey. But perhaps that absence of support was forcing me to develop resilience and conviction that would ultimately serve me well. In the darkness of failure, I was beginning to see that being underestimated might actually become my greatest advantage. The pivotal moment came on a Tuesday evening as I stared at my corporate performance review. Meets expectations was checked in every category, with a perfunctory 3% raise noted at the bottom. 2 years of suppressing my creativity and conforming to Lawrence Marketing's rigid processes had earned me nothing but mediocrity on paper and emptiness in practice. That night, I made a decision that would alter my trajectory forever. I would completely overhaul my business concept based on the painful lessons of my first failure and the market insights I'd gained since then. Instead of creating a general platform for all creative professionals, I would focus specifically on the intersection of technology and traditional visual arts, an underserved niche with unique challenges that larger platforms weren't addressing. The new concept, which I named Canvas, would provide specialized tools for visual artists to digitize and monetize their work across emerging channels, while giving tech companies access to original artistic talent for product differentiation. The platform would include proprietary technology for digital rights management, fractional ownership of original works, and integration with augmented reality applications. Over the next 3 months, I rebuilt from scratch. My apartment became command central as I conducted in-depth interviews with artists struggling to navigate digital opportunities and tech companies seeking authentic creative content. Every night after my corporate job ended, I worked until exhaustion on market analyses, competitive positioning, and financial projections. With a refined business plan and prototype sketches, I began approaching potential investors. The first 10 meetings ended in rejection, each one echoing familiar patterns from my family life. Interesting concept, but without technical co-founders, I'm not convinced you can execute on the technology components, one investor said dismissively. The creative market is notoriously difficult to monetize effectively, another commented, and frankly, your background doesn't suggest expertise in either the arts or technology sectors. Each rejection stung, but unlike my family's dismissals, these provided specific objections I could address. I recruited 2 technical advisors with relevant experience. I deepened my financial models to demonstrate multiple revenue streams. I secured letters of interest from potential corporate clients who saw value in my vision. On my 12th investor meeting, I finally connected with someone who looked beyond conventional patterns. Jordan Reynolds, an angel investor who had built and sold a music licensing platform, immediately grasped the market gap I was addressing. "The problem isn't that your idea bridges different worlds," he said after I finished my presentation. "The problem is that most investors only understand one world, but the most valuable innovations often happen at intersections." Jordan offered $150,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 15% equity stake, significantly less than I had hoped for, but enough to begin building the platform in earnest. His investment came with introduction to his network of industry contacts and technical advisors who could help turn the concept into reality. The night after signing the investment agreement, I sat at my kitchen table with a momentous decision before me. The seed funding wasn't enough to support both Canvas's development and my living expenses. To pursue my vision fully, I would need to leave the corporate safety net and commit completely to entrepreneurship. After calculating minimum living expenses and a runway of approximately 18 months, I drafted my resignation letter to Lawrence Marketing. The mixture of terror and exhilaration I felt confirmed I was finally making a choice aligned with my authentic self rather than others' expectations. My family's reaction to my decision was predictably discouraging. "You're leaving a stable job during economic uncertainty to pursue another startup after your first one failed?" my father asked incredulously during Sunday dinner. "That's not just risky, Vada, it's irresponsible." "I've secured angel investment," I explained, trying to keep defensive tones from my voice. "The investor believes in the concept and has successful exits in related industries." "Angel investments usually come with extraordinary expectations for growth," my father countered. "The pressure to scale quickly leads many founders to make poor decisions." My mother touched my arm in what she likely thought was supportive gesture. "We just want you to be realistic, darling. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. There's no shame in building a conventional career." The conversation inevitably shifted to Natalie, who had recently completed her PhD and accepted a prestigious research position at a well-known institute. Her path continued to unfold with the smooth precision of careful planning and institutional support, while mine remained experimental, self-directed, and viewed with skepticism by those who should have been my biggest champions. That spring, our family gathered for Natalie's graduation celebration. The event was meticulously planned, with relatives traveling from multiple states to attend the ceremony and subsequent dinner at an upscale restaurant. Throughout the weekend, my parents beamed with pride, introducing Natalie to colleagues and friends with effusive descriptions of her accomplishments and promising future. During Saturday's celebration dinner, I mentioned recent progress with Canvas, including promising meetings with potential clients and the hiring of our first 2 developers. "That sounds like an interesting hobby," my aunt remarked with a patronizing smile. "It's good to have creative outlets alongside your real career." "Canvas is my real career," I corrected her gently. "I've left my corporate position to focus on it full-time." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table before my mother quickly steered conversation back to Natalie's research publication. The implicit message was clear. My sister's conventionally prestigious path warranted celebration, while my entrepreneurial journey was a concerning deviation best not discussed in polite company. Following my resignation from Lawrence Marketing, I moved to a significantly smaller apartment in a developing neighborhood to extend my financial runway. I sold my car, cut non-essential expenses, and embraced the lean lifestyle of an early-stage founder. While Natalie settled into her well-appointed research office with institutional resources at her disposal, I worked from shared co-working spaces, carefully tracking every expense against our limited funding. Canvas's development proceeded in iterative cycles of building, testing, and refining. We created a minimum viable product focusing on the core matching algorithm that connected visual artists with technology companies seeking original digital content. Our first technical hire, Anya, brought critical expertise in digital rights management, while Marcos, our UI designer, created an intuitive interface that received positive feedback from early users. Each small victory, signing our first 10 artists to the platform, securing a pilot project with a mid-sized tech company, positive coverage in a niche industry blog, felt significant after months of uncertainty. We operated from a shared workspace where entrepreneurs at various stages gathered to build their visions, creating a community of support and knowledge sharing that contrasted sharply with my family's skepticism. Though Canvas was still pre-revenue, momentum was building. Artists appreciated our transparent approach to digital rights and the new opportunities we created, while tech clients valued access to original content that differentiated their products in increasingly crowded marketplaces. The validation from actual users helped quiet the lingering doubts implanted by years of family dismissal. Throughout this period, my relationship with Tyler evolved as we both navigated the challenges of early-stage entrepreneurship. His music platform was gaining traction among independent artists, creating natural synergies with Canvas's focus on visual arts. Our shared experiences, the exhilaration of small wins, the anxiety of uncertain funding, the creativity required to solve problems with limited resources, created a bond of understanding my family couldn't provide. You know what I find fascinating? Tyler said one evening as we compared notes on recent platform developments. The way you approach problems is completely different from anyone else I know. You see connections between seemingly unrelated fields that turn out to be exactly where the opportunity lies. His observation highlighted precisely what my family had always treated as a liability: my tendency to think across traditional boundaries rather than drilling deep within established frameworks. In the entrepreneurial world, this quality was increasingly recognized as valuable, especially as technology blurred lines between previously distinct industries. As Canvas completed its first year of operation, we had built a community of over 300 artists and 24 corporate clients using our beta platform. We were not yet profitable, but user engagement metrics were strong, and we had begun attracting attention from industry publications and potential partners. Meanwhile, Natalie faced her first significant career setback when federal budget cuts affected her research institute, reducing funding for her department. My parents immediately mobilized, connecting her with colleagues who might have alternative funding sources, reviewing her grant applications, and providing emotional support through the uncertainty. The contrast between their response to her challenges and their reaction to my entrepreneurial journey couldn't have been starker. When I faced obstacles building Canvas, the implicit message was that difficulties confirmed I'd chosen an impractical path. When Natalie encountered funding issues, these were framed as temporary setbacks on an otherwise worthy journey that deserved family resources and support. Yet something unexpected was happening beneath the surface of our family dynamics. As Canvas gained traction in the market, as industry publications began featuring our innovative approach, as my confidence grew through successfully navigating entrepreneurial challenges, subtle shifts occurred in how I responded to family patterns. The desperate need for validation that had defined much of my young adulthood was gradually being replaced by an internal compass calibrated to my own definition of success. I still attended family gatherings, still felt the sting when conversations centered exclusively on Natalie's achievements, still noticed the absence of questions about Canvas's progress. But these dynamics no longer defined my sense of self or determined my choices. I was building something that aligned with my authentic abilities and vision, regardless of whether my family could recognize its value. What I didn't anticipate was how dramatically this internal shift would eventually force external changes in patterns that had seemed permanent for decades. The call that changed everything came on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing new artist applications for Canvas. The number wasn't familiar, but something prompted me to answer rather than let it go to voicemail. "Is this Veda Mitchell, founder of Canvas?" a woman's crisp voice inquired. "Yes, speaking," I replied, mentally preparing for another sales pitch from service providers targeting startups. "My name is Eleanor Winters, head of creative acquisitions at TechArts International. Your platform has been brought to my attention by several of our partner companies. I'd like to discuss potential collaboration opportunities if you're interested." My heart rate doubled instantly. TechArts was one of the largest digital creative marketplaces globally, with resources and reach that dwarfed Canvas's current operations. A partnership could catapult us years ahead in development and market penetration. "I'd be very interested in that conversation." I managed to respond professionally despite the adrenaline surge. The subsequent weeks became a whirlwind of meetings, due diligence, and negotiations. What began as partnership discussions evolved into acquisition interest, as TechArts executives recognized the unique approach Canvas had developed for digital rights management and artist technology matching. Our proprietary algorithms and user experience designs addressed pain points their much larger platform had struggled with for years. While TechArts had the resources and market reach, I could only dream of, they lacked the innovative approaches to artist relationships and content licensing that formed Canvas's core strengths. The potential synergy was obvious to both sides, leading to increasingly serious discussions about acquisition terms. As negotiations intensified, I assembled a small advisory team including Jordan, my original investor, and two experienced founders from my entrepreneurial network who had successfully navigated acquisitions. The proposed deal evolved rapidly. TechArts would acquire Canvas for $8.4 million with additional performance-based earnouts potentially adding another $3.2 million over 3 years. The offer included a position for me as Creative Innovation Director, with my small team integrated into TechArts' larger organization while maintaining significant autonomy. The structure would preserve the vision and culture we'd built while providing resources to scale impact dramatically. Throughout this period, I told no one in my family about the potential acquisition. Years of having my business aspirations dismissed had taught me to protect my entrepreneurial journey from their skepticism. Even as lawyers finalized terms and the deal moved toward closing, I maintained silence about this transformative development during family calls and gatherings. Meanwhile, Natalie's career challenges continued. Her research institute announced another round of funding cuts, putting her position at risk, despite her impressive publication record. During this period, our parents intensified their already substantial support, making weekly calls to academic contacts, editing her grant applications, and even offering financial assistance to bridge any potential gap in employment. The acquisition closed on a Tuesday morning in early spring. After signatures were complete and funds transferred, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my bank account balance, a number that had instantly transformed from perpetual anxiety about runway to life-changing financial security. At 32, I had built and sold a company for a sum that would not only validate my vision, but provide freedom to pursue future ventures without financial constraints. That evening, I allowed myself a quiet celebration with Tyler and my small Canvas team. We reminisced about the early days working from shared spaces, the technical challenges that had seemed insurmountable, the rejections from investors who couldn't understand our vision. Each obstacle had forced innovations that ultimately made Canvas valuable enough for acquisition. Tivada, Jordan toasted, raising his glass. Who saw connections nobody else recognized and had the courage to pursue them despite convincing arguments to play it safe? The validation from people who understood the entrepreneurial journey was deeply meaningful, but a hollow space remained. Despite all logical reasons to maintain distance, some childlike part of me still yearned for my family to witness this moment, to finally acknowledge the value in my different path. 3 days after the acquisition closed, my parents organized their annual Thanksgiving gathering. With the deal now public in industry publications and my new role at TechArts beginning the following month, I decided to attend rather than creating excuses as I'd done with recent family events. The familiar dynamics emerged immediately upon my arrival. My mother fussed over Natalie's favorite dishes, while my father engaged her in lengthy discussions about academic politics affecting her department. My contributions to conversations were politely acknowledged, then quickly redirected. No one asked about Canvas or my professional life. During dinner, my father raised his glass. A toast to Natalie, who just received word that her research proposal has advanced to final consideration for national funding. We're so proud of how you've persevered through the Institute's challenges. Glasses clinked as congratulations circled the table. I joined, sincerely happy for my sister's potential breakthrough, despite the continued pattern of celebration focused exclusively on her path. And Natalie, my father continued, we've been thinking. If there's a gap between positions or funding sources, your mother and I want you to know we've set aside resources to ensure you can continue your important work without interruption. That's incredibly generous, Natalie responded, though I noticed a flicker of discomfort cross her expression. But I'm hoping it won't be necessary. Well, it's there if you need it, my mother assured her. We've always believed in investing in promising futures. Something in that phrase, promising futures, struck a nerve exposed by years of unequal treatment. Before I could process the wisdom of speaking up, words escaped me. That's interesting, I said, my voice steadier than the emotions churning beneath. I don't recall similar offers when I was building Canvas with maxed-out credit cards and ramen dinners. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. My mother looked startled while my father's expression tightened in the way it always did before dismissing one of my impractical ideas. That was different, Vada, he said firmly. Startups are inherently speculative ventures. Natalie's research has clear societal value and established metrics for success. The familiar justification for their unequal support might have silenced me in the past, but something fundamental had shifted. The acquisition had not just validated my business acumen, it had confirmed that my different way of seeing the world had genuine value, regardless of whether my family recognized it. Actually, I replied calmly, I've been meaning to share some news. Canvas was acquired by TechArts International last week for $8.4 million plus potential earnouts. The silence that followed was unlike any I'd experienced in our household. Forks paused midair. My father's glass stopped halfway to his lips. My mother's perpetual motion around the dining room suddenly ceased. You sold your company? My father finally asked, disbelief evident in his tone. The art website, the digital creative marketplace with proprietary rights management technology and AI-driven matching algorithms. I corrected using the same precise language I might in a business meeting. Yes, TechArts recognized that we'd solved problems their much larger platform had struggled with for years. $8 million, my mother repeated weakly, sinking into her chair. Plus potential earnouts of up to $3.2 million based on integration milestones, I added. And I'm joining their executive team as Creative Innovation Director. As the information sank in, I watched a complex mix of emotions cross my parents' faces. Shock giving way to confusion, then calculation, and finally something resembling respect, though tinged with discomfort. Why didn't you tell us you were in acquisition talks? My father asked, his tone suggesting I'd withheld something they deserved to know. The question crystallized decades of family dynamics in a single moment. The truth rose to my lips without filter or softening. Because you've never once believed in what I was building, I said quietly. From the moment I chose a path different from Natalie's, you treated my goals as misguided at best and irresponsible at worst. You've celebrated her every achievement while treating mine as distractions from what you considered a real career. My voice remained steady, but emotion colored every word. When Natalie faced setbacks, you mobilized every resource to support her. When I struggled building Canvas, you pointed to those challenges as evidence I should abandon my vision and return to conventional employment. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. We've always wanted what's best for both of you. What you considered best for me, I corrected. Not what actually aligned with my strengths and goals. Do you know how painful it's been to watch you invest so heavily in Natalie's future while treating mine as unworthy of similar support? To have every family gathering become a celebration of her conventional achievements, while my entrepreneurial progress was dismissed as a hobby. Years of carefully contained hurt flowed into words I couldn't stop. I detailed specific instances when support was withheld from me, but given abundantly to Natalie when my accomplishments were minimized, while hers were amplified when my different approach to building value in the world was treated as inherently less worthy than her academic path. The worst part, I continued, my voice finally betraying emotion, wasn't the practical disadvantages of building without your support. It was the constant message that my vision, my way of thinking, my very self was somehow less valuable than Natalie's. Do you have any idea what that does to someone's sense of worth? As raw truth filled our dining room, I expected defensive responses or attempts to reframe family history. What I didn't anticipate was Natalie's reaction. She's right, my sister said quietly, surprising everyone at the table. You've always treated us differently. You've supported every step of my path while questioning every choice Veda made. She turned toward me, genuine emotion in her eyes. I've always envied your courage to follow your own vision instead of the path laid out for you. While I was doing exactly what was expected, you were building something truly innovative despite everyone telling you it couldn't work. Her unexpected alliance shifted the emotional current in the room. For perhaps the first time, my parents faced unified feedback from both daughters about patterns they had normalized for decades. The perfect family dinner lay in shambles around us. Unable to process more emotion, I rose from the table, gathered my coat, and walked out the front door without looking back. In the cool November air, tears finally came, not just for the immediate confrontation, but for the years of unequal treatment that had shaped my relationship with my family and myself. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my complete truth without filtering it through the lens of family approval. Whether that truth would destroy remaining family bonds or create space for healthier patterns remained to be seen, but in that moment, the relief of authenticity outweighed all other concerns. The week following Thanksgiving passed in silence. No calls from my parents, no text messages from Natalie. I alternated between relief at the emotional distance and anxiety about permanent family fracture. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in transition planning for Canvas's integration with tech arts, finding solace in the tangible validation of my professional journey. 7 days after the confrontation, an unexpected visitor appeared at my office door. My father stood awkwardly in the entrance, looking smaller somehow in the creative energy of the tech arts workspace. "Your assistant said I might find you here," he explained, taking in the open floor plan with programmers, designers, and business development specialists collaborating in various configurations. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" The surprise of seeing him in my professional environment momentarily suspended my emotional defenses. I nodded, leading him to a small conference room with glass walls overlooking the city. "I thought I should see this place for myself," he said once we were seated, genuine curiosity in his voice for perhaps the first time regarding my work. "It's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" I asked, genuinely interested in his perception. He gestured vaguely. "Something less substantial, I suppose. This is clearly a significant operation." The admission revealed just how completely he had dismissed my professional path without investigation. For years, he had treated Canvas as a temporary diversion, rather than the innovative enterprise it had become. "Would you show me what you've built?" He asked, the request so unexpected, I momentarily thought I'd misheard. For the next hour, I walked him through Canvas's technology business model and vision. I introduced him to team members, demonstrated the platform's functionality, and explained the synergies that made the acquisition valuable for both Canvas and TechArts. Throughout, he asked thoughtful questions that suggested he was truly attempting to understand, rather than seeking confirmation of preconceived judgments. As our impromptu tour concluded, we returned to the conference room. My father sat quietly for a moment, looking out at the skyline before turning back to me. "I owe you an apology," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "A significant one." He folded his hands on the table, a gesture I recognized from my childhood when he was working through complex thoughts. "I've spent my entire career analyzing economic systems through established theoretical frameworks," he continued. "Those frameworks served me well in academia, but created blind spots about emerging models of value creation. I dismissed your vision not because it lacked merit, but because it didn't fit the patterns I understood." His voice wavered slightly. "More importantly, I failed you as a father by measuring your worth through a narrow lens of achievement that didn't capture your unique talents. Seeing what you've built here today, the innovation the team you've assembled, the problems you're solving, makes that failure painfully clear." The apology, unexpected and unqualified, momentarily left me speechless. For decades, I had sought validation that seemed perpetually withheld. Now it was being offered freely, prompted not by my emotional appeal, but by my father's direct observation of what I had built. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of reflection since Thanksgiving," he continued. "The patterns Natalie confirmed. They weren't consciously created, but that doesn't make them less real or less harmful. We focused resources on what we understood and valued, without recognizing we were sending painful messages about whose future mattered more." As he spoke, I felt something shift within me. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but an opening toward possible reconciliation. The pain of years of unequal treatment couldn't be erased by a single conversation, but acknowledgement created space for healing that denial never could. "I'd like to understand better," my father said finally. "Not just what you've built, but how you see the world. I've clearly missed important perspectives by dismissing paths different from those I recognized." The invitation to be truly seen by my father unlocked emotions I had carefully contained for years. We talked for hours that afternoon about Canvas, but also about the experience of growing up in the shadow of a favored sibling, of having my different way of thinking treated as a liability rather than an asset of building, without the support that had smoothed Natalie's journey. 2 days later, my mother requested her own meeting, lunch at a cafe near my apartment. Unlike my father's intellectual approach to reconciliation, hers was more emotional and initially defensive. "We never meant to make you feel less valued," she insisted as we waited for our food. "We just worried more about you because your path seemed so uncertain." Natalie followed systems with clear metrics for success. "Your creative approach felt risky by comparison." "The problem wasn't your concern," I explained carefully. "It was that concern for me translated to restriction and judgment, while concern for Natalie translated to support and resources. The message was clear. Her future warranted investment, while mine warranted caution." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I think I projected my own fears onto you," she admitted after a long pause. "I grew up with artistic interests my parents discouraged as impractical. I chose science partly to avoid the uncertainty of creative fields. Seeing you embrace that uncertainty triggered my unresolved fears." Her admission revealed layers to our relationship I hadn't recognized: how her unresolved conflicts had shaped her parenting, how her attempts to protect me from disappointment had actually limited my support system. While this insight didn't excuse the pattern of favoritism, it helped me understand its origins in something more complex than simple preference. The most surprising conversation came from Natalie herself, who appeared at my apartment the following weekend with a bottle of wine and evident nervousness. "I've wanted to have this talk for years," she confessed as we settled onto my living room couch. "But I never knew how to start." She twisted her wine glass between her fingers. "I need you to know that being the favorite wasn't always a gift. While you were free to discover your authentic interests, I was trapped performing excellence in the specific ways Mom and Dad valued. Their approval came with suffocating expectations." "I never saw it that way," I admitted, reconsidering our childhood from her perspective. "I just saw the support and validation I wasn't receiving." "Every achievement became a bar I had to clear next time," she continued. "Every scholarship, every award raised their expectations further. The support came with invisible strings, conformity to their definition of success. Meanwhile, I watched you building something truly yours, and felt envious." Her confession startled me. "Envious of what?" "Of your freedom to define success on your own terms. Of your courage to pursue what actually energized you rather than what was expected. Of the authentic life you were creating." She smiled sadly. "The family resources came my way, but the true independence was yours." As we talked through the night, a different picture of our family dynamic emerged. While I had envied Natalie the support and validation our parents readily offered her, she had envied me the freedom to discover my authentic path, despite that support being withheld. We had both been shaped by our parents' narrow definition of worthy achievement, just in opposite ways. "I'm considering a significant career change," she confided as dawn approached. "The research position sounds prestigious, but the work doesn't fulfill me the way I once thought it would. I'm drawn to science education and public engagement, translating complex concepts for broader audiences." "That sounds perfect for you," I responded, genuinely excited by how her eyes lit up describing this alternative path. "You've always had a gift for making complicated ideas accessible." "But it would mean walking away from the prestigious research track Mom and Dad have always envisioned," she said, uncertainty evident. "I don't know if I have your courage to disappoint them." "Maybe they've learned something from this situation," I suggested. "And if not, you're welcome to borrow some of my hard-earned immunity to family disapproval." We laughed together, the sound-healing years of unstated competition neither of us had chosen. In the months that followed, our family embarked on the uncomfortable but necessary work of establishing healthier patterns. My parents suggested family therapy sessions where decades of unexamined dynamics were finally addressed openly. My father explored his unconscious bias toward traditional achievements, while my mother confronted how her unresolved relationship with creativity had affected her parenting. The process wasn't linear or easy. Old patterns emerged in subtle ways, requiring conscious recognition and correction. Setting boundaries around respect for my choices and expertise remained an ongoing practice rather than a single conversation. Meanwhile, Canvas's integration with tech arts proceeded successfully, with our technology enhancing their market position while their resources expanded our impact. My role as Creative Innovation Director allowed me to continue developing new approaches to connecting creative professionals with opportunities, work that remained deeply fulfilling. Natalie eventually did pivot her career towards science communication, developing programs that made complex research accessible to broader audiences. To everyone's surprise, our parents supported her change in direction, perhaps finally recognizing that authentic fulfillment mattered more than external prestige. The most profound change wasn't in my family's perception of my choices, though that shift was significant. The deeper transformation was in my relationship with validation itself. The years of building without family approval had forced me to develop internal metrics for success: clarity of purpose, alignment with values, positive impact on users, personal fulfillment in the work itself. While family recognition felt healing after its long absence, I no longer required it to know my path had value. That hard-won independence had become perhaps the most precious outcome of being underestimated for so long. 1 year after the acquisition, my family gathered for another Thanksgiving, this one markedly different from those that had preceded it. My parents asked detailed questions about TechArts' expansion plans. Natalie shared exciting developments in her science education initiatives. Achievements were celebrated without hierarchy or comparison. During dessert, my father raised his glass. "To both my daughters," he said, his voice carrying genuine appreciation, "each brilliant in her own way. Thank you for the courage to forge authentic paths, even when that meant challenging our limited vision of success." As glasses clinked around the table, I caught Natalie's eye and saw reflected there the shared understanding of how far we had all traveled. The family that had once been defined by comparison and favoritism was learning imperfectly but sincerely to celebrate our different forms of contribution to the world. Being underestimated had shaped me profoundly, building resilience, forcing self-validation, and developing conviction that withstood external doubt. The wound of unequal treatment would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined my worth or relationships. In proving my family wrong about my potential, I had also freed myself from depending on their assessment to know my value. That freedom, hard-won through years of persisting despite doubt, had become the unexpected gift of being the underestimated daughter. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued by those who should believe in you most, I hope my journey offers some encouragement. Your different path may be precisely where your greatest contribution lies, even if others can't yet see it. Building authentic success sometimes requires believing in yourself first, letting results eventually speak for themselves. Have you ever had to prove yourself to family who underestimated your potential? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that being underestimated can become unexpected motivation. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the people who don't believe in your vision aren't meant to understand it until you've already made it reality.